I don't know what the problem is, but here we are, here we are, here we are. I hope persons remained and stayed on the line. Thank you, Dr. Leslie. Thank you, Curtis. I did exactly what you said. I checked the related volume levels within the R stream. And here we are. I hope you're still here. We thank those who have joined. For those who joined last week, we looked at hiding in the spotlight. And so we want to just move this morning and continue. For those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Marcia Thomas. I am a Christian leadership life coach, best-selling author, a trainer, and I'm also a consultant, and I help persons with their dissertation. Thank you so much for joining Leading with Light. We had a little glitch this morning, but we are moving on and we are sorting it out. All right, we looked at how men reacted last week to leadership depression. And so we looked and we spoke about their inability to deal with leadership depression. We said leadership depression manifests itself in certain ways. And for men, it shows up differently than for women. We looked at some statistics and we look at 72% of leaders reporting feeling lonely or isolated in their role, and 60% of executives feeling used up at the end of the workday, and 1 in 3 women in leadership saying that they're feeling emotionally drained most of the times. We also looked at leadership depression as this persistent disconnect because of isolation at the top, the fear of failure, the constant pressure to perform, the decision fatigue, and emotional labor, and the lack of support systems or trusted peers, especially for females. Then we looked at why we miss it. We looked at it because we are told that high achievers are expected to handle it. Depression, we must have that discipline where we are able to keep things in check. And then vulnerability is seen as a weakness in leadership spaces, especially for men. Men have it harder to be vulnerable than women. Women are expected to show their feelings, to wear it on their sleeve because of hormonal changes and all sorts of things. But men are expected to have it together all the time. We looked at the fact that men are humans, and so they also go through pain. They are hurt, they are tired, they are frustrated, and they can also have this strong disconnect from their own success. They can feel like an imposter when things are not going as they want, and there can be the emptiness and isolation despite the external achievement. And then because they are likely to put themselves into their work, there is chronic exhaustion. And then there are other numbing behaviors that we see are related to male and females. It's common for both of them. Thank you so much for joining, Margaret. Lisa, thank you for joining. Curtis, I see you. Dr. Leslie, thank you also for joining. Charita was here. I hope you all are still here. We want you to contribute to the conversation, and we want you to just stay put. All right, so there we are. There we are with what is there. All right. All right, so we want to continue. I'm just putting things out there for persons who might feel that we are out of the whack. All right, so we also want to look at the fact that men rarely admit that they are emotionally fatigued, and they suppress their emotional pain. And so they come off as detached, cynical, or irritable, most of the time being overworked because they are socially conditioned to not to talk about their feelings. And so it sometimes shows up as risky behavior, which might be that they start using alcohol or drugs, or they might start smoking, or they might start living outside of how they normally live and attract things to themselves and habits and routines that are not the norm they are also likely to become withdrawn or irritable. This week, we wanted to talk about how it shows up in women because we covered last week how it shows up in men. And so if you want to look at that, then you can look at our replay. All right. So we can look at our replay. So it doesn't look the same for everyone, is what we are saying. And so in women, they might appear fine, but they are depleted inside. There is this emotional pain that they suffer inside. And this forces them to overserve, to always try to please, and because of the guilt, and they tend to feel that it could be worse, and so they are grateful. They feel that they should be grateful for what they are going through because it could be worse. They are still standing. They don't want to have this thing where persons feel, especially if they are wives or mothers, that they are not showing up. So they overserve and they move with a smile on their face. Nobody sees the size and so on because they have to be all things to all men. They have to be a wife at home and meet the needs of their partner. They have to show up for their children, for their church community, and for their job. And so their emotional exhaustion level or index is usually higher, and it shows up in different ways because sometimes there is the suppressed frustration, and women feel that they can't express their anger or fatigue without being seen as emotionally unstable, high strung, uh, dramatic. And even as leaders, that is how it is seen by their male counterparts. And if their CEOs or presidents in their organization or in their industry, which is mostly male dominated, are not sensitive enough, then they miss it. And it causes women leaders to overcompensate or try to be overly agreeable because they don't want to attract attention to themselves. And the overcompensation is because they are making this effort to be, and because they have to be 5 times as good as a man that is not even doing so well, that is not exceptional in the industry, for them to be accepted as worthy collaborators or colleagues or co-partners with men. And so they carry a perfectionist streak and they feel they must do it all. They must lead, they must nurture, they must perform, they must prove themselves. And so they carry this guilt or this feeling that they are not enough personally as well as professionally if they are not there for all persons. Most of the times they choose the job because of the productivity illusion or the comfort that they think this job will carry and how it helps and support all the machines of their homes, their children's education, supporting the husband in paying the bills, and also being able to give them the things that she thinks will carry them and pull them into the success pillar that they are aiming for. And so this can become very frustrating when you choose the job and you have because of the benefits and you now miss the important milestones of your children, you miss your doctor's appointments, and you take home the work with you because you want to meet all the deadlines and you want to remain at the top. And this is a persistent, subtle, invisible weight because you carry a guilt for not being personally and professionally on target if something falls out of place, if you miss a deadline or if you miss an important milestone or you're not able to spend quality time with your family, or a crisis comes up and you cancel that vacation or family celebration because you're the leader and you feel you have no choice. Then you might also have where there is the emotional suppression, this stress that you're carrying, this guilt, these issues, you ruminate on them and you internalize them and you carry them. And because of this emotional suppression, you end up suffering from chronic fatigue or burnout, or you, in extreme cases where there is not enough support groups or sensitive persons in your work and in your family to see what is happening, you can have a crisis, you can hit rock bottom, you can have a breakdown, which we call emotional shutdown. And so you want to avoid that. You want to make sure that you avoid that. And so you want to say, you might use the pressure that you get from those who appear to be role models, those who are in a male dominated space. You might feel that in the male dominated industry, you don't have a roadmap, and you're saying to yourself, I don't see anyone like me leading and breaking down. So you are forced to remain standing even when you're tired, or you need to take a break, or you're going through a crisis. You might be suffering loss. You might be going through a separation, meaning your child might be going to college miles away from you in another country. You are dealing with that. And that those losses, those spaces, those gaps, you are filling those gaps while you are leading, and have the crisis and have the decision fatigue, where you have to be making decisions for everyone, and some persons are not accepting the decisions that you're making because it doesn't serve their immediate purpose. They are not looking at the bigger picture. All of that compounded, and you feel that you must hold it all together because your role models in the male dominated industry are not showing up. They are not breaking down. So they are not showing up as practical human persons or co-partners that you can share with, and you don't have that support. And among your family, you might not have that support also, because you have been all things to all men. And so you are being taken for granted, and you always show up. So nobody realized that you are breaking down. Nobody realized that you are hurting. Nobody realized that you're struggling. Nobody realized that you're feeling alone and unsupported. Nobody realized the emotional fatigue that you're having, and the loss of direction and the disconnection. Nobody realizes that, even though you might be showing it up in many ways. And so, how can you control or navigate or fix leadership depression, or prevent leadership depression? First, I would want to say that you need to create safe places where you can be real. So you need to find a support network, a group of colleagues, a support group in your church, whether they become prayer warriors. You might need to have also a space where you can talking to yourself, nurture your soul. So a safe place can also be that you spend time meditating or with God in quiet spaces. Some persons use yoga as their safe place. And that, if it is in a sheltered structure among family members who you can trust, your spouse, your children, where you can be vulnerable, or your parents, or church friends, women groups that are structured, where there you can speak from all the places that makes you up in a non-judgmental environment like that, where you can share your fears, your limitations, your disengagement, your disillusionment, your disgruntlement, your doubts, your struggles and your challenges, then that is a safe place that you must create. And you must choose your support network very wisely. And you must include persons that can give you emotional support, mental support, and spiritual fortitude while being objective. Persons who can pull from you your weaknesses and your strengths and help you to integrate and overcome fear or doubt. There must also be persons in that group that must be able to pinpoint, even when you are not speaking or saying anything, that you are not showing up at your A game, and must be able at some point to pull you back into soul care and or self-care, depending on what they are able to observe with their natural eyes, and also what be able to listen to what you are saying, and also more importantly what you are not saying. What you're not saying is very important to nip leadership depression in the bud. And so you must have those people around you, wise counselors, and they must also be your spiritual mentors as well as your emotional mentors and your mental mentors. They must It must be that these persons don't need you as much as they love and value you, because that is a sign that will help you to fix and overcome leadership depression. You must also have persons who can reaffirm you even when there is a mistake or a failure on your part. You must have persons who can credibly pull from you those things that you hold, that the emotional suppression, the guilt, and the feeling that you are not enough, or that if you fail these persons, you are failing yourself. If you say no, then you are being unkind. And if you say yes, you are actually enabling those who can help themselves. You need to have persons that can strike that balance. And then, if it is that you're so introverted, or you have persons around you that show up, that they can't be trusted, in the sense that things that you share with them, it's brought back and thrown back at you at a later date, and that you don't, in your circle and in your male dominated industry, or even in your immediate female dominated industry, in those jobs where they are female concentrated, if you find that there are peers among that group that you are not able to trust, then you want to go for therapy, or you want to have a coach, because you want to have those honest, non-transactional relationships that you can be free and share what you are sharing. All right, so we want to look also at creating affirmations that work for you. So those affirmations will help you to understand the difference between who you are and what you do. A lot of times we confuse our roles with our identity. When you lose your job, you don't lose your identity. Your purpose is not deferred. It's not canceled. And so you must always nurture your soul in such a way, through, first of all, your networking group, or through your meditation, because we touched that already, through creating the right boundaries, because you can be kind, but you must have your limit. You must create your boundaries when you are kind to yourself and you pour into yourself, so you are able to pour into others. And so when you understand who you are as against what you do, then it creates that clarity and confidence to move forward, because you will always be true to yourself. And so you can't be false to any man, because you know your purpose and you're very clear and distinct about the steps that you need to take there. Then it pulls you into, it integrates wherever you are placed to carry out that role. So your voice carries with it the grace that is absent in any context that you're placed to serve. And your leadership carries with it the objectivity that makes you treat people the way you want to be treated and make decisions for the good of all and not for a small group. When you know who you are, you understand that you are given an assignment, and where you're placed, there is a work for you to do. It might not be permanently, it might not be an entrenched position, because when your assignment is over and you are sufficiently prepared, God places you on a higher plane and carries you based on your preparation and what you now carry into another position or role that requires you to do greater. Or and so you are sent to persons at a particular time to change their outcome and to change their lives. And when you have done that, you have created disciples to do the work where they will be assigned, and you might be carried forward or you might be carried out. So you might be carried upward or forward, or you might be carried out. And so when you know who you are, you understand that you are carrying yourself and you're carrying your divine assignments at each point, and your calling must be fulfilled. And so you're building a consistent legacy that does not look different or is not separated from service. So your service becomes embedded into a full understanding of an identification of your calling, your unique gifting, your purpose, and also you begin to live in the light of that purpose. And so wherever you are placed, you do not focus so much on what you do, but on who you are and why you were sent. And that why determines what you do and how you do it, and the influence and impact that you have. And you begin to grow, inspire, and teach others to become masters of their own destiny. And that way, you will never confuse your role with your purpose. And you will never associate your position or what you do and call that your identity. And many persons get depressed because they expect the accolades and applause and the recognition and visibility from what is done rather than who they are. Those who embed their character in the minds of others carry and maintain and nurture that legacy, because persons talk about how you make them feel and how much you cared, the compassion that you delivered, the kindness that you showed, the understanding that you shared. I want to go slowly so you understand those points. So even those who never understood all of that, because they by nature were selfish, there will always be someone to say, this is how I benefited. This was how it changed my life. This was how it changed my outcome. And your legacy will be on those lips. Even those who feel that they didn't benefit from you will say, John benefited, but I didn't. Because you were not sent to them, you were sent to John. Once we understand that, you're able to fit into your role because of your identity, because of who you are, and because of your why. Then you must be able to trust your team so you can delegate. Trusting your team for me is not having persons who will do what you want them to do. It's not getting them to do what you want them to do. It is what I call fortified consensus. Fortified consensus is when your team members buy into your vision and integrate that vision into their core values and resonate their vision with your vision in a merger that strengthens the goal and create strategic action that is very cohesive and very collaborative instead of competitive. And so that way, you can close your eyes and trust your team because they are united in a goal that they believe in the innermost parts of their soul will make the difference that they intended to make for the whole and not the part of the organization. They believe also that their unique gifts and talents is a part and parcel of the success and not a separate entity. So they believe in collaborating, moving their strengths to cover the weaknesses of others on the team and causing the elimination by valuing the innovation and the creativity of their team members in such a way that I start the work and give my side, use my unique gifts and talents. And I am not able to do everything because I don't have all the giftings. So this is who will be able to complete it perfectly. And that informal structure or unwritten law is where you have that type of trust in your team that is emotionally fortified, that people are able to be themselves and argue for their own success and significance by understanding where they fall on your team and in the industry and how valuable their contribution is for the overall success and well-being of the organization. And in that way, you allow your middle managers and individuals on the team members holistically to take ownership of the results, to be accountable, and to become a part of the governance structure by doing what they are required to do, leading themselves. And so, as they lead themselves, hold themselves accountable, trust themselves, believe in themselves, and are able to test themselves to see what they are producing and how they contribute to the team, and holistically bask in the achievement and the small steps or monumental steps that might be at, attain because of how they played their part and how well they were able to fit their puzzle into the bigger whole, then they are now able to take ownership and they feel valued, they feel appreciated, and they have an experience the joy that is felt for the overall success of the organization, and they value the place that they hold and they see it as a sacred and divine duty. When you're able to have and understand that, then you will reduce the incidence of disillusionment or disgruntlement that you may have or your team may have. And it's also argues well for you because you will love going to work, you will love working with your team, and your expectations will increase. When that happens, your peace of mind will become more intact, joy, your work will become joyful, and your resilience index will build because you will see mistakes and failures as not punishment but tests, just as a test to move you forward. And for a woman, that is extremely important. So here we go. Just to avoid that pressure that is put on you to succeed, especially in a male dominated industry, that can lead to disillusionment, and the emotional suppression, the exhaustion can actually internalize that disconnect. So there is this high functioning depression. You want to shift from your performance, as I said before, to your purpose. So you want to be able to find the balance, strike that balance between your faith, between your work, between your family life, and you want to ensure that as you move in whatever position you are, you integrate your values, meaning that you understand the legacy and you push it into your leadership by your daily actions. So your core values are not separated from your work, and your decision making is not separated, and how you treat others is not separated from your core values, because you treat others the way you want to be treated, and you operate from a place of logic and fact, from your observation, from listening to what is said and not said, rather than from a place of emotion. And that legacy is put into your leadership. You're able to separate it. You know when you must be vulnerable. You know when you must nudge your team. You know when you must support them and nurture them. And you know when you're to test them and give them ownership. So they can see what they can produce. You also know how to delegate and when to delegate. So that delegation is used as a motivational tool and not as a reward tool. You also want to practice your mindfulness, as I said before. You want to journal. You want to look at what went well. And each time, as often as you can, I do it daily in my setting. I encourage leaders to do it at least twice per week. So you see, you can recalibrate if you're off course. So you want to see what works, what went well, what could have been better. You want to journal what is consistently bringing in rewards and reaping the results that you want across the industry and across the habits and established policies, standards, and routine. And you also want to maintain a spiritual connection where you go into yourself and nurture your soul. You give yourself hope. You give yourself, you reignite your faith, and you rekindle your belief in yourself as you do these mindful acts. You more than ever, though, want to create space for your soul to speak to you and not just your mind. You see, when you're close to God as a leader and you're not leading to your own understanding, your paths are directed, and that direction is sent to your soul. And that's very important that you understand that it is sent to your soul. Some persons call it intuition, some persons call it gut feeling, some persons call it that persistent voice that is speaking from inside of you. You want to create space to hear what your soul is telling you and respond, because that voice is a divine voice and you want to respond. So I want you to ask yourself this question, which is so important. If I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone, what kind of leader would I be? And I want you to ask that question. I want you to ask that question to yourself, as well as asking the question. And males and females, that is where you are integrated now, where both of you ask yourself that question. So you want to look at understanding that performance is not purpose, but your purpose can lead you to perform and to fulfill your God-given calling. Because there's a difference between who you are and what you do. And that difference is really based not on your role, but on your identity. And that is why persons can have the same roles and responsibility and show up differently. They show up very differently. And that's why I keep saying and explaining that some persons are very good at their role and can carry out their job description to the T, but they have no idea what their purpose is. And so they follow the procedures, they follow the knowledge, but they have no idea what their purpose is. And if they are to tell you their core values, and when I speak with my clients, I see them and I hear them and how good they are. I look at the accolades, the achievements, and so on. But when I ask them to assess their soul, do their purpose alignment audit, pull from themselves what they really believe, and if everything was taken, who they would be, they find it very hard to answer that question. Very, very hard to answer this question. If you were not a wife, who would you be? If you were not leading this organization, who would you be? If you were not active in your church community and on your volunteer groups, who would you be? If you weren't a mother or a father, who are you really? Who do you say I am? Because many times when you say who persons are, they say I am so and so, I am the wife of, or I have so many children, or I am the husband of one wife, and those types of things. But who am I? When you ask persons to say who they are, they struggle to say I am a no nonsense person. I believe that life must go in a particular direction. I believe in kindness and that we must be kind to people. I believe that forgiveness is a greater tool than unforgiveness. I believe that I have these particular gifts and talents. I know that I am good at, and I know that I love to do this. And so to get them to that point can become very difficult. We have to be very careful. All right, so I hear you, Nathan. Very good. I want to post this. I want to show it. Very good, Nathan. I see that, and I thank you so much. Performance doesn't equate to purpose. I believe that also. Your core values isn't divorced from the workplace. Shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. But discipline must make you understand how your core values show up. Because tolerance is also accepted, because persons, we have to accept people for who they are, and we can't change people. What we need is the discipline to tolerate each other and to appreciate each other for who they are. And we must also have the discipline to understand that when we are in an industry or an organization, those, whatever contract we sign, whatever comes up, and whatever we agreed to, we must be honorable enough to carry them through. And so if where you are was out of convenience, or because you feel your back was against a wall, then you must find a way to integrate your core values into your daily roles and responsibilities. You can't expect persons to change for you. You must be able to adjust and be very flexible while integrating and maintaining your core values. And sometimes that disconnect creates conflict in the workplace and make us become confrontational, because those expectations are brought to the fore and we are demanding our pound of flesh. And we have to be very careful that we generate habits throughout our core values that make us heal instead of destroy people and destroy ourselves. So the question I ask, if you weren't trying to prove anything to anyone or please anyone, what kind of leader would you be? Very, very important question that I want us to take away from the discussion with your question and answer. And so we go to the place where persons, you can ask your questions. I'm on YouTube. You can also ask your questions right there and then. And I want to say to you, if this conversation resonated with you and you want to continue the conversation, you can do your purpose alignment audit, which is on my profile on LinkedIn, and you can schedule a soul sync strategy session from that, the results of that purpose alignment audit, because it gives you where you're standing and what you need to do to get there. It gives you some clues using my free model, the steps that you can take, and if you need support, you just need to schedule your soul sync strategy session with me. All right, the key takeaways is that leadership is what we do. It's not what we do, it is who you are. So we want to correct that. Your identity is not rooted in your achievement or your performance. And coaches, therapists, or mentors moving towards them, seeking support is not a sign of weakness. It's really God's provision. I also want us to remember, and if anything, if we have not taken away anything, this is what I want us to take away from the discussion today. True leadership begins the moment you stop performing and start listening to the voice within. True leadership begins the moment you stop performing and start listening to the voice within. And that voice within must be your anchor, your mark, your soul cry. You must listen. And that voice will pull you in the direction you need to go, what you need to change, what you need to alter, when you need to cry for help, when you need to take a break, when you need to pause, when you need to speak to a coach or a therapist, when you need a mentor, and when you need to recalibrate, rejuvenate, when you actually need to realign, when you need to reassess, and when you need to reflect. That's what the voice tells you. So you want to make sure that you move in that direction, and you also want to take the actions that are necessary. So purpose is revealed through movement is something else I want you to understand. And I want you to understand that purpose means the same for all persons. Service. You lead through serving, and your impact starts with giving. So as I said, what would be your next step? You can DM me to complete your purpose alignment audit. It's on my profile. And you can join the monthly actualization program. And you can also look at pre-ordering my newest book, My Faith Looks Up. It's rekindling your faith, your hope, and your purpose as a leader. Thank you so much for joining and being patient and remaining despite the glitch this morning. And also have a great Tuesday. Make sure it is peaceful, intentional, and purpose-filled. Have a great rest of week. I want to thank you, Nathan. I want to thank you, Lisa. I want to thank you, Charito. I want to thank you, Dr. Leslie. I want to thank you, Curtis. Margaret, I want to thank you so much for joining. Franklin, Simone, and all the others who have joined on Facebook, on YouTube. For those who are going to do the replay, you can ask your questions and I will put your answers there from my experience, from my expertise, and also I normally give support from a Christian perspective. Bye for now, and see you next week when we start another important series on life and leadership. Everything life and leadership. Goodbye for now from Leading with Light, and may your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, which is in heaven.